So welcome to February's Inland SoCal Housing Collective General Meeting. Thank you everyone for showing up. To start off today's meeting, we're invited Housing California to come and to share a little bit with us about the housing priorities for the year, some reflections on just the policy landscape, some general updates, reflections on the budget, and generally all things policy, since we really look to Housing California and many other leaders for that perspective at this local regional level. So I'd like to welcome Chris Martin, who will be presenting, and Lauren too, I believe will be presenting. So I'll go ahead and share out if you want to just quickly introduce yourself, Chris, and get started.
Sure, and thanks for having me. Great to see you all. I am Chris Martin. I'm our policy director at Housing California. And just a little bit about Housing California for those that may not know us. We have been around for about 46 years as an affordable housing and homelessness organization, statewide advocacy organization. So we do affordable housing production and preservation policy. We have done work around homelessness, and we do a little bit around housing stability and tenants' rights issues. We also have the Residents United Network, which is a network of residents that live in affordable housing and come up with their own ideas and thoughts around policy. They advise on our policies, come up with their own ideas for policies for the legislature, and are really embedded in our organization from the top to bottom. We have them as part of our board of directors. There's part of our policy committee, really centering that lived experience in our organization throughout. So that's really key and core to who we are. And I'm part of our policy team. Our policy director, colleague Lauren, is here with us, our policy manager. And then we have two other folks that do our affordable housing and homelessness lobbying. I've been here for a little over 7, almost 8 years now. So been through a lot over that time period. And so if you ever have any questions or just want to talk housing policy, always happy to. Feel free to go to the next slide. And feel free to throw questions throughout in the chat. I'm good with that so that I can get a break from speaking at any point throughout. So feel free to throw any questions in there. Just to start us off with kind of setting the grounding for where we are and what's going on in the legislature with regards to themes this year. I think everyone knows that there is a lot happening on the federal level. And so California has, in the past, under the Trump administration, and now again, kind of playing the role of the resistant state. So y'all probably know that there was a special session held earlier this year in December and January to really focus on getting prepared for the new administration. That included a few different things. That included getting resources to the Attorney General's office to be able to sue the federal government. They've already taken action on that, I believe, multiple times now. And they provided resources for that. And then they also provided resources for legal services organizations throughout the state to be able to provide resources and legal defense for folks that are, largely facing discrimination or are undocumented and really thinking about how they can protect folks. So that was how the legislature got started this year. And I'll jump to the last one and then come back because the fires was the other big thing that happened early in this legislative cycle. And I think that has really is gonna and has already impacted things in the legislature. We're seeing legislators, particularly Los Angeles legislators, that are dedicating almost their entire bill packages to fire response. Um, and legislators are already under a bill limit that is lower than in the past. And so this is definitely going to impact people and what they focus on this year. It's also going to impact the budget pretty heavily because the tax filing deadline for people in Los Angeles was pushed back to October. And so what that means is we will not know the amount of revenue the state has
Okay,
to
I'll check that right now and I'll
adjust
get
their
back to you.
state budget before in the normal process. Um, And so this is going to mean that things are going to get delayed. We're going to probably have a little bit of an ad hoc approach to the budgeting. Looks like we might, there we go. And so what that means is we're probably going to be kind of guessing a little bit. The legislature's done this in the past during COVID when tax filing was delayed, but we won't know the typical processes along the way. Like the May revise will be adjusted because we won't know all of the full picture and scope of what type of resources we have to play with and the amount of resources we have. So that's really going to impact the budget this year. And it's really overlaying all legislation. So kind of those two themes are really overhanging. I think I would emphasize a few other aspects with this legislature. One is there's over 30 plus new members. We'll get to that in a moment, but that's really going to impact things. Um, we've of course seen the budget kind of sway as it relates to deficits and surpluses. Some folks are predicting a surplus. The governor is of about $300 million. And that's going to shake out over the next 8 months, and we'll see how that lands and what money we have to play with. And then I would say on the kind of the way the legislature is thinking about housing is a little bit different now. I think we've lost a little bit of momentum as it relates to both interest and enthusiasm around housing and homelessness. I think some of that comes from voters feeling like we haven't made progress. Some of that is due to messaging that we've seen both on the federal and state level that's really harmed our ability. And I think something that I've been saying in every space we go to is we really need to emphasize what we have accomplished in the last decade, which is pretty drastic compared to what we used to be able to accomplish. We're increasing housing production significantly. We have more people being served by our homelessness services system than ever before, but we are still facing a crisis that is just getting worse by the day. And so I think legislators, as a result, are turning to things that aren't productive. Accountability. I would put quotes around that. We don't really know fully what people mean when they say accountability. We've seen folks really focus on cost containment, so lowering development costs and thinking about how they can create efficiencies there. And then legislators on the homelessness side are really turning to criminalization and blaming the individual. And that has been really rampant recently. City of Fremont just passed a really devastating ordinance locally. And we're seeing all around the state people start to turn to criminalization, which we know is not a solution to homelessness. And so that is playing out in the legislature too. So a lot happening there. And on the new members, we have about 30 plus, a little over 30 plus. And over the last kind of 4 years, we've seen about almost two-thirds of our legislature turnover. So a lot is changing. We're seeing a lot of institutional knowledge gone, a lot of members, the chairs of committees are changing. Both the Senate and Assembly housing committees had their chairs change. They're both Bay Area chairs of those committees now, and Matt Haney in the Assembly took over for Chris Ward, and Senator Aisha Wahab took over for Nancy Skinner in the Senate side of things. So new leadership there. And so a lot is changing on that front. Housing California has been spending the last 2 months in the legislature meeting with all of these new members, trying to get them acquainted with them and educate them on what housing policy works and evidence-based policies. And it's just a lot of work to get to all these folks and educate them. And so that also is something I would say is a piece of action I would push to all of you as well, is to meet with your member and really talk to them about housing and the importance of housing and how, and try to get them educated on that front. And so you can see here are some new members in the Senate. I would note Chris Cabaldon. We'll talk about him a little bit later as it relates to a bill, but is going to take over a pretty important role as he is the budget chair for the Senate subcommittee that handles housing. So he is a housing, champion, really interested in housing, and is going to be helpful on that front. And Jesse Arreguín is also really interested in housing, somebody that really stepped into that role. Is, I believe, on the housing committee. And then I know Senator Perez is also really interested in homelessness. That's something that's been really helpful on that front. Let me go to the next slide. And here's all the new members in the assembly, quite a few. And so I won't go through all of these folks, but as you can kind of get a feel for, a lot has changed. And there's a lot of folks, coming into these roles from different aspects than their predecessors, in different perspectives. So it's a lot of work for us to educate these folks, and get them up to speed with how things work in the state legislature. But and there's going to continue to be some changes in the next couple of years as well with the elections. So. Next one. Alrighty. So I'm gonna try and be as positive as I can, but it's kind of challenging at times. So this is particularly not the most exciting thing. The governor released his January budget. He is constitutionally required to release that by January 10th. This year, he has proposed new or no new funding for housing and homelessness outside of the $100 million that was previously committed under a previous budget. So he is not proposing new funding for the low-income housing tax credit program. He is not proposing new funding for the multifamily housing program, or any of the key things that we know are necessary. Um, Also, things at DSS on the homelessness side are going to lose their funding is going down pretty significantly after this year. So that's going to be impactful. And also, the governor did not propose any new HAP resources for the homelessness side of things. Um, I will say that this is kind of the same song and dance we play every single year in the budget. The governor, it's all about leverage. And the legislature has their budget that they'll pass, and the governor will pass his priorities, and then they'll have to find a path to meet in the middle. And in the last few years, our champion on the housing and homelessness side has always been the Senate and the Assembly. Um, and so this really is about leverage. This is just kind of him trying to get what he wants, knowing that the legislature is going to prioritize housing and homelessness, and he'll have to put in resources at the end of the day and work with them. But a lot of this is just leveraging. It's kind of silly at the end of the day, because we know that this governor really cares about housing and has every single year up until now prioritized the low-income housing tax credit program. This is the first year he didn't. And so kind of surprising on that front, but generally speaking, none of this is and caught us really off guard. We kind of anticipated this. Um, and it's going to be up to us to really raise the issue in the budget process. Go to the next slide. So for the one kind of, I guess we could say positive thing, somewhat positive thing that did get announced in this budget cycle is that the governor is hoping to create a new housing and homelessness agency. He is breaking up the alphabet soup agency of Business Consumer Services and Housing, or BCSH, to two different agencies. One will be focused on housing and homelessness, and then the Consumer Protection Agency will be the other. Um, this has been something that housing advocates have been asking for quite some time. We had a bill in one of my first years at Housing California to create an agency, and it was vetoed by the governor. And here we are. We're finally seeing this come to fruition. There's a lot unknown about this process and what's going to play out here. We haven't seen the details of his proposal yet. But what we do know is that he will submit a reorganization plan to the Little Hoover Commission, and that Little Hoover Commission then has 30 days to review that proposal from the governor's office. And then they will hold a public hearing and put forward their plan for reorganization to the legislature, who then has 60 days to approve or deny that plan. So that'll all happen pretty soon. I think that it's going to be important for us to be involved in this process, both publicly, in the public hearings and submitting letters. So Housing California is going to be convening folks to think about what this agency could look like. I think it's a great opportunity for us to start thinking about streamlining, particularly on the homelessness side, where we have so many programs at different agencies, that it may make sense to finally bring those over to one agency. I think there's a really important conversation that's going to be had around the LIHTC program and how that gets allocated in the future. And so I will just say that We don't know a ton, but we're going to have a lot of opportunity and a lot to engage in throughout this process. Um, and the other thing is on the HAP side of things, the governor has been really focused on accountability. It's really his number one thing is accountability, accountability, accountability. And luckily, I think one of the good things that happened on HAP is it moved over to HCD and is being implemented by HCD, who brings a housing lens and a housing focus to that program. So that'll be really important. Um, and we'll talk about the bonds in a minute, but I do want to flag one of the challenges here to that last bullet is that we want to make sure that when we're framing and talking to people about the budget and the bonds, that we talk about them as complementary to each other. The budget can handle this current, need in the current year, but the bond is really the long-term thing, and they can't be an either or. And we have to make sure that when we're talking to legislative staff and legislators that we are mentioning that these are complementary, that it's not one or the other, so that we make sure that they're not competing with each other. But I'll talk more about the bonds in a moment. I think we're ready to the next slide. So here are Housing California's priorities. And these are 4 bills that we are sponsoring this year so far. The first is about data transparency as it relates to insurance, really focused on the affordable housing insurance crisis. Much of the insurance crisis that gets coverage in the news is about single family housing. And we are really trying to bring the spotlight onto the affordable housing crisis, where we've seen developers facing 100, 200, even 300% increases year over year. This has been really particularly hitting permanent supportive housing developers and apparently veteran housing providers. So we're trying to get more data on that to help us inform some future policy on that front. That is going to be introduced by Mark Gonzalez. I believe it's actually being introduced today. That, or we have 2 Mark Gonzalez bills. I'll talk about the other one, which is related to fair housing. This bill is particularly going to be important now that the federal government is planning to repeal all of the affirmatively furthering fair housing provisions that we have on the federal side of things. Luckily, in about, I think it was 2017, we passed AB 686, which created the state of California's affirmatively furthering fair housing policies. And really, this is really focused on, integration and making sure that people have access to areas of opportunity, and that we're not just building affordable housing in low-income areas, and that we're providing affordable housing in, higher opportunity areas. And I think, this, like I said, this is really important now that the federal government's going to be repealing their affordable or affirmatively furthering fair housing policies. And so California can continue to be a leader in this space and keep our fair housing provisions in there. So this bill would look at really getting into the next cycle of housing element and trying to get jurisdictions to start zoning in those areas of opportunity, as well as defining what it means to affirmatively further fair housing. And that'll be help jurisdictions understand what it means to AFFH and what it doesn't mean. So that's kind of what that bill is focused on. So either that or the insurance bill will be introduced today. We understand Gonzalez is going to introduce one of the two today, and the other will probably be tomorrow or Friday. The other 2 bills we're working on are related to homelessness more so. So Medi-Cal housing support services. This is really focused on the services right now that are considered in lieu of services as part of Cal AIM. Those are like housing navigation services and housing supportive services. These are, we're trying to make them a benefit. They're currently an incentive for managed care organizations to do this. And we'd like to make them a benefit so that everyone has access to them. This would require federal action, but first the state must request that. And so we are trying to work on a bill that would require the state to request that benefit from the federal government. This was done last year from Assemblymember Mainshine, AB 1085. That bill was unfortunately vetoed because it didn't have a budget allocation. So this year we're working on both fronts, and Assemblymember Wicks is authoring that. And then quickly on the last one, because I'm realizing I got 5 minutes, is the last one is related to reentry. This is something Housing California has basically worked on every single year I've been at Housing California. This is really looking at people that are formerly incarcerated, and trying to provide housing and services to them to stabilize them. There's an existing program at the Board of State and Community Corrections. I was one of the folks that was on the first steering committee to implement those resources. And we are looking to move that program over to the Department of Housing and Community Development. We just don't think that a corrections agency that's focused on the carceral system should be focused on housing. Housing people should be doing housing, not people in the carceral system. So to kind of increase the efficacy of this program and effectiveness, we want to move this over to HCD. This bill does now have an author. It is Assemblymember Schultz as of this morning, or I guess now this afternoon. He has committed to that. We don't have a bill number for any of these yet. And then next slide will be the biggest thing for us. So I mentioned this earlier. I don't think I need to tell everyone the need for affordable housing resources. But this year, we are continuing to be focused on a bond. Last year, we were really focused on this as well. Last year, it was from Buffy Wicks. And last year's bond was unsuccessful. The legislature ended up choosing the climate bond and the education bonds that went to the ballot. And so we are back asking for $10 billion for affordable housing. And a couple things I would note. One is what it funds. It funds about almost $7 billion for the MHP program, which would be used, 5.2 of that would be used for general MHP. And then about almost 2 billion, 1.75 billion would be used for specifically supportive housing for unhoused folks. There's also resources for home ownership. There's resources for preservation in there. There's resources for the Joe Cerna Farm Worker Housing Program. There's resources for the Tribal Housing Program. And then Senator Cabaldon's version of the bill includes resources for disaster recovery as well. This year is a bit different in the sense that we are introducing two bills. And so we have from Buffy Wicks introduced yesterday AB 736 and from Senator Cabaldon SB 417. These are near identical. As I mentioned, the only difference is that Cabaldon's has disaster recovery resources in it. We are really focused on moving both of these forward. The goal of having two bills is really to just elevate the priority for these in both chambers right out the gate and continue to make sure that both chambers are involved in this process from the beginning. And then at the end of the day, one of them will get signed, hopefully. Fingers crossed. So we're really hoping that folks can get engaged in this process in lifting up the bond. Tomorrow, there is an opportunity to join a webinar that we're hosting with Senator Cabaldon and Assemblymember Wicks to kick things off. We'll be holding monthly calls with the community to talk about the bond and give updates. But the biggest call to action I have for everyone I'm talking to in the housing world is please meet with your member. Talk to them about the bond, talk to them about the need for affordable housing, take them on a site visit. We are, they can hear from lobbyists like me until they're blue in the face. But really, the people they want to hear from are the people in the community. And so, as much as you can meet with them and tell them about housing in your jurisdiction, the better it'll be for the bonds so that they can hear from more folks. We're really trying to build up momentum for this. We have over 20 co-authors in the two chambers, so that's at least good to get us started, but a long way to go to make this successful. I did see a question about the bond. No, it does not cover manufactured housing in there. We kept it pretty specific to the kind of flagship programs, the MHP program being the main one that we're focused on within that. And then the last, kind of two things that we're focusing on, budget advocacy, as I mentioned earlier. I can put in the chat later the link to our sign-on letter. We just submitted that with over 80 signatories. And trying to build up the momentum around that. And as I mentioned earlier, the criminalization efforts in this legislature are really problematic. We're already seeing some bills to get rid of housing first. bills to criminalize folks. It's just kind of running rampant in the legislature this year. So we're doing a lot of work to fight against those. Looks like I'm right on time at 1:29. I think that's everything I've got. Happy to answer any questions folks may have. And you can see my email in the next slide, I think. Cal Home is in the bond, yes.
Mhm.
That's the home ownership component of it.
Well, thank you, Chris. And I had reached out, if you guys want to drop the link to the webinar for tomorrow, please feel free to do so here so folks can sign up and just, be attuned to what's happening as this was just dropped and we kind of got notification too. So yeah, feel free to drop that in there. And even if there's any other one pagers or any information to share on those policy pieces that you've mentioned, feel free to drop that resource in there too. So folks can follow up and dive into a little bit more of what you guys shared out today. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Okay, great. Awesome. So I want to thank you, Chris and Lauren for coming and presenting and sharing with us. We look forward to, I look forward to seeing you guys next month at Advocacy Day, Lobby Days up there for the conference and so forth. And I know there's a handful of members who will also be up there. So we look forward to meeting you in person and to be, that local voice for our region up there in Sacramento. So thank you guys again. Feel free to stay on and listen. We have another presentation coming up too.
Of course. Thanks for having us and hope to see you all at the conference. And if you haven't yet, sign up to come to the award show too. There's going to be a lot of great stuff happening there as well. So forward to seeing you all there.
Thank you. Oh, sorry guys, gotta just get my screen set up. Awesome. So we're gonna transition to our second speaker for today. So we wanted to highlight some regional work that's happening out in our Coachella Valley area. If you guys didn't see in the agenda in the newsletter, we have Jesse Ibarra from NPHS. And we also have Ariel Williams. Don't see on the screen. There you are. Sorry. Tolefree-Williams also here to share from the city of Palm Springs to share out about the project that is underway there with a community land trust. And I see there's a lot of other supporting members of that project. It definitely takes a team to build housing, right? And I see many of those folks on here. So I just want to say kudos to all those from Lift to Rise, from Inland Equity. I know other partners that were a part of that process, and I'm sure there's many more. But Jesse, I can, should I make Ariel or you a presenter?
If I could present, that'd be great.
Okay.
I just
There you
need the ability to share my screen. Okay, I can do that. There we go. Hopefully y'all can see that. Let me put it in presentation mode.
Mhm.
Can everyone see that?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, it looks a little weird on my end for some reason. I'm seeing some stuff. So I'll be looking this direction. My apologies. But before I do
Okay.
that, I'm Jesse Ibarra. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not in a presenter mode. It's just showing the PowerPoint, but that works too if you want to do it like that.
No, I prefer it in full screen. How about that? Good?
Perfect. That's better.
Excellent.
There you
Thank you
go.
so much. So again, my name is Jesse Ibarra. I'm Chief Business Officer with Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services. I see many familiar faces on the call, so I won't bore you too much about who we are, but I do want to start with, talking a little bit about NPHS and sort of how we got on this journey to where we're at with this partnership with the city. And then we'll do a deep dive. Ariel can introduce herself now, and then she's also going to talk a little bit about the partnership later in the presentation. Ariel, you want to go ahead and say hello?
Yeah, hi everybody. I also see a lot of familiar faces. Hello everyone. My name is Ariel Tolefree-Williams. I work for the city of Palm Springs. I work on all things affordable housing. So I'm happy to talk more about what we're doing with NPHS. This is a really exciting project for us.
And thank you, Melanie, for the opportunity to share this information. I hope it's useful and beneficial to those on the call. Again, a little bit about NPHS. We are a nonprofit affordable homeownership provider and community developer serving the Inland Empire, East LA County, and now we're moving into Imperial and San Diego counties as well. We have three main areas of impact. One of them is what you see here where it says generational wealth and building and preservation. That's really revolves around our HUD counseling. So we're a HUD counseling agency. We help folks get on the path to home ownership and help them stay there. We do that through a myriad of different types of products and services. Most of our services, again, are counseling to help with home buyer education, help them understand what it takes to become a homeowner and be a long-term sustainable homeowner. Secondly, we are a CDFI, and so that is sort of the financial assistance that sort of helps push people, to the next level to really break down those barriers to entry into affordable housing and home ownership. So most of our programs revolve around down payment assistance. We also help with preservation. So we want to help preserve homes through home rehabilitation. We're also trying to meet the failures of the marketplace. And so we're now starting to create products that are really designed to help the needs that are facing our communities today. So some examples are we launched our ADU Go product in 2023 in response to a lot of low-income homeowners looking for affordable accessory dwelling unit and financing options. And then we've recently, last year in 2024, created our resilience product. It's Resilience and Resilience Now. And this is a retrofit program to assist low-income homeowners or those living in low-income census tracts to do some home hardening retrofit. So basically, what that means is in our region, we experience high winds and wildfires, and so we want to create that resiliency for homeowners, not just financially, but their actual structures to their homes. So this retrofit program allows for them to, make improvements that make that home more resilient to wildfires. And we offer discounted rates for them meeting IBHS, which is the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety standards, at least the base designation, wildfire prepared designation that they just launched in California and Oregon. And then lastly, we are an affordable housing developer, and that's what we're here to really dive into. We have this vertically integrated approach to all our works. As you can see, sort of even those three areas of impact, they all overlap. And so what we've done is we've sort of taken not only the integration within the departments, but within the products and services that we're providing. And one of the things we did was launch Homes by NPHS, which is our manufactured retailer. So that's an ability for us to not only source more affordably and directly from factories for our infill development, but also provide affordable housing solutions to low-income homeowners or developers, either BIPOC developers, nonprofits, or those just looking at alternative construction methods to access this type of housing. So we've been utilizing the community land trust for some time, but now we're starting to work in partnership with cities to create more community land trusts to preserve affordability long term, and we'll do a nice deep dive. And then all of these other things are really just related to infrastructure and amenities and things that we're including within our construction and design process to ensure that we're building not just affordably, but quality homes that rise to meet the wellness of families. And that's the most important part for us. I'm going to take you real quick through our journey into this world. We've been around for 34 years almost now, and have been doing infill development for quite some time. Just over a decade ago, costs were rising and we were looking at alternative ways to construct. We started with a partnership with the city of Chino, and we developed 3 modular homes. So these are actually modular homes that you're seeing. And although we did see some cost savings, it was really in the form of time that we saw the cost savings, not so much in construction. The biggest difference in manufactured and modular is they both can be built in volumetric versus panelized systems. However, the biggest difference is HUD oversees the design and construction of a manufactured home. So it's inspected by a third party rep and approved at a federal level. Whereas a modular construction, although it can be volumetric, analyzed, still a lot of the features and approvals come from the local jurisdiction in which they're operating in and or developing it. This is an example of an actual manufactured home in the city of San Bernardino, one of our earlier homes. And what we're using is MH Advantage and or a choice home. So FHFA has what's called a duty to serve, which all the GSEs comply with. That includes Freddie and Fannie, and they each have their own designation. I think Fannie's is the MH Advantage, and then Freddie is the home choice. And if I mix them up, my apologies, but I think I'm right. And so what that means is that if they're built to a HUD code standard plus some additional features, right, or requirements in terms of, it has to do with space between the floor joists and grading, meaning they want a lower profile look. Roof pitch needs to be a minimum 412 or more, things like that. They meet those design standards and they're placed on a permanent foundation, then they are treated just like any other on-site stick-built home. And they qualify for financing just like any other on-site stick-built home. And they're appraised just like any other on-site stick-built home. So they are no different than an on-site stick-built home. Other than that, they're built more efficiently and quickly in a factory rather than, in the elements outside, where your typical construction happens. So we love that product, and we love the aspect of having any type of financing and available to our clients when we go to sell the properties, that we began to shift our focus towards this MH Advantage or home or choice home type product under the manufactured homes. So I'll skip over here to the last project that we completed in the city of San Bernardino. This was a special project. We call it a gateway demonstration project because we wanted to demonstrate and showcase what a manufactured home could look like with an accessory dwelling unit on a community land trust. We wanted to combine all the different features. Previously, when we've partnered with cities to create affordability, we've been subsidizing each borrower. So as we get some money, the city secures it as a second or third lien against the property. It's usually deferred, maybe even a forgivable loan. Either way, at some point, they may need to recapture that and then find a new buyer. Typically, housing prices have gone up, and then it's cost the city more money to go ahead and invest and create that same affordability for the next family. They also have, obviously, staff time and energy that goes into monitoring these projects and ensuring that each transaction thereafter occurs as it's supposed to, because they don't always work like that. And as you know, following with foreclosures, if the property goes into foreclosures, can also be an issue and can essentially wipe out some of those restrictions that the city's placed on the property. So the community land trust model has been new and emerging, and we'll do a little deeper dive, as I mentioned, later on in this presentation. But I wanted again to focus on this product because we've included solar battery storage on this. This is the first home with the wildfire prepared designation through IBHS in California. It's the first manufactured home. And again, this is showing how we can do a manufactured single family 1,500 square foot home and a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 800 square foot ADU, all in a community land trust. It could be done. And it was all under $600,000 of total development all in. This is how beautiful these units are. You can see the interiors, and that's that these are already considered technically an older unit. The front single family model has already been discontinued. We have new models, which we'll show off in just a few. And the technology is only getting better. Diving into the Palm Springs project, what we wanted to do was really, again, serve our typical population, which is low to moderate income, those between 80 and 120% AMI, which is typically we've seen as our workforce. It's everybody who lives and works in our communities. And so we wanted to create a product that was affordable and it's high quality. And, we looked at different models of how we were going to approach this. The city had 3 lots that they had available that were undeveloped. They were left over, a part of an older development project called Highland Desert Estates development, which was years in the past. And they've been sitting vacant for quite a while, and they were looking to develop these. So we looked at their SB 9 laws and guidelines and saw that, hey, we've got some opportunity here with potentially subdividing these 3 lots and creating more density. So we're looking to build 6 single family homes all on a community land trust to be sold to low-income households. And the affordability with the land trust will be up to 99 years. Here are some examples of these models. And again, this is interesting, and I want to point out the design here because, as you know, Palm Springs is well known and romanticized, at least I did, about their architecture, specifically around the mid-century modern and the celebrity homes, and so this area, we felt it was very important for us to essentially come correct, make sure we have a product that is paying homage to their history and and conforms into their existing neighborhoods. So and it was also an exploration for us to figure out how far we can take design on a manufactured home, because a lot of times people, even we, being a dealer, had misconceptions in terms of what could be done and how customizable are these units. We realize is they're extremely customizable, both in and out. Even with the existing models, you can alter floor plans if needed to a certain extent. Right, you need to keep similar footprint, but we can, design anything we want essentially on the exterior. And because the only structure that's being built on site is the garage, we even have the ability to mess with roof lines or, the aesthetic of the overall structures, because of that. And so we can mess with porches and extending them or shrinking them. And so the exterior materials, we're typically using a fiber cement because we are building, again, a wildfire resilient. So we want to use fire retardant materials. And so, hence the reason we are sort of stuck on certain things, but you can stucco these buildings. You can use wood siding, vinyl siding, all kinds of different board and batten. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do either in the factory or on site after it's been installed. And so here's a interior of one of these units. And you can see these are, again, our go-to 1,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a 2-car garage. This will include also solar panels, battery storage. They'll all have the wildfire prepared designation included. We use what's called a WUI package that's available through a lot of our factories. WUI just stands for the Wildland Urban Interface. And there's special packages that includes things like fire sprinklers, and again, the exterior cladding being non-combustible materials like fiber cement. Here, you'll see 2 of the sites. This is actually one site that we would be subdividing to have 2 units. See sort of some ideas of these layouts. Here's another site. There's a 3rd site that we are still in question if we're going to get 2 units out of it, so I left it out. But this would be the unit if we can get what it would look like. Something like this. It may have a 1-car garage rather than 2. So here's the 1-car garage version of that. So you can get an idea. And again, you can see the design very modern, still paying homage again to the mid-century look, not just a box, and we're paying attention. So again, in the beginning of this, Melanie threw out some folks' names. So one of them was Inland Equity Community Land Trust, and they really helped with laying the initial groundwork for us in terms of the policy. They had been already advocating for community land trusts with local council folks and staff, and so we didn't even know that was happening. But when we got in there, they were already like it made it a lot easier for us to cross that finish line in terms of getting a CLT model push forward. And then, as you can see, this capital stack, part of our capital stack here is construction and pre-development financing. The city has contributed an amazing amount to this to make this work, not only in the form of donating the land, but also providing assistance in terms of the actual grant subsidy that's going into the project to make these affordable long-term. And so although it looks like quite a bit of money, oh my God, $2 million, almost $3 million from the city, it actually equates to less than $5,000 a year when you think about this is a 99-year affordability. So, you typically don't get that when you're using anywhere between $250,000 to $400,000 to subsidize your average borrower. And then you have to recapture that. Again, it's going to cost you more. You're only getting maybe 10 to 15 years out of that max. Even if you do 30 years, most folks don't stay there 30 years. So you got to recapture that. And again, it's going to cost you more the next borrower. In this case, this is a subsidy to the project. The land is staying in possession of NPHS, who is the community land trust. So we retain ownership of the land. The capital improvements like the buildings are sold to individual homeowners who own them, and they appreciate the appreciation we'll get into a bit. They appreciate but there's a cap, okay? And it's really tied to the area median income. So if we're selling to an 80% AMI and below a client, then it's tied to the index is essentially that AMI. So in 10 years from now, if they were to sell the property, and an example I have in here is County of Riverside. In the last 10 years, it's increased by somewhere between 32 and 34%. So you're looking at, if you bought it for 200,000, you're selling it for close to 270. That is more or less what you're going to see in appreciation, plus any equity that you've built through paying down the mortgage. And then NPHS is the steward and is ensuring that each transfer thereafter occurs as it should and goes to obviously another low-income household and helps that process out, and also making sure that these properties are maintained throughout this 99-year period. So it's actually more bang for your buck when you look at it in the full scope for a city to go ahead and contribute this amount, and they never have to worry about these units again. They will have these units affordable on their books for 100 years. So that's extremely important. And then on the back to the construction and financing, another folks that was mentioned is Lift to Rise. So we were working with a low income investment fund, a local CDFI in the Coachella Valley, and they were able to contribute. Lift to Rise was able to contribute some of the capital that is going to be loaned to us for construction financing, and it's helped bring down our rate. So we're offered a blended rate because of that infusion of capital, thus making this feasible, financially feasible for us as the developer to proceed and get this project done. So just wanted to mention that. Now I'll be quiet and I let Ariel talk a little bit about the city and the partnership. And so please take it away.
Well, Jesse said all my part already, so we can just, no, I'm just kidding. So like Jesse said, that we are working together. Okay. Sorry, folks coming in my office. So the city of Palm Springs is really excited to work with NPHS on this. The city owned these 3 single-family lot properties in the northern part of our city, and they basically just sat there empty for years and years and years. As Jesse said, they were part of a previous development that didn't end up getting developed, and we had them under our Surplus Land Act. I'm like, I don't know if I see any other city people on here, but for those who know the Surplus Land Act, we have to do something with it as far as affordability. So we figured, let's go ahead and see if we can build anything. And a lot of developers are not into building infill development. But we are very happy that NPHS is, because we already work together on other projects and our missions are very aligned. But I do want to get into just some information on who the city of Palm Springs is, especially for folks on the other side of the mountain. Like Jesse said, it's very idyllic. Like, it's this place where the rich go and party and do all of these things. And we are a resort community. However, there's a lot of room for improvement, and the people that make sure that this resort community is amazing and people have such a great time, they're struggling to pay their basic bills. So those are just the facts. And it's also extremely hot, as people know. During the summer, this past summer, I think it was like, I don't know, maybe like 40 days in a row over 120. It was something like really ridiculous. So that's one of those things where when we're looking at building these things, Jesse touched on like all the different features of the home. Those things are important to us as well, because we want to set up our homeowners for success. We want to make sure that their homes can stay cool. We want to make sure that they can afford to pay the bills, which is why the solar is so important, all of those things. So a lot of things really, NPHS managed to tick all of our boxes that we put on our RFP and things that were important to us. And, it's stuff that they were already doing. So that was really exciting to us. Jesse, you can go to the next one. So I kind of got into this a little bit, but like I said, we're more than a resort town. We have extremely high energy costs, which is why, again, a lot of what you see on the homes is so important to us, and then thankfully to NPHS as well. It's hot. we've got climate crisis, cost of living crisis. Because this is a place where there can be a lot of money, housing prices are very, very expensive. That's, rent, even some of our affordable housing, whether it's for sale or anything else, everything is very, very hot. We've got our heat waves, dust storms, everything. So all of those things come to mind for us when we're looking at how we can build housing just as a city. A lot of our residents are on fixed income. As I said, our hospitality employees, retail, a lot of people are on single incomes. This is a place where a lot of people come and retire, so they are on their Social Security or disability. And, just because you see someone in a nice big house doesn't mean that they can afford it anymore. So these are kind of all the things we're thinking about. And I saw someone, asking a question about homeowner protection. And this is looking at homeowner protection just kind of over the long, just over the 99 years, basically. Like, how can we make sure that this home being built now is going to be successful for those not only here and now who buy it, but in the future and the multiple generations after that. So it's something that we're really looking at. And then most of our buildings are inefficient, especially homes that have been built 60, 70, 80 years ago. They look beautiful from the outside, but as someone who's working with NPHS on our home repair program, a little rough on the inside. Lots of things people can afford, new roofs or, cooling systems, anything like that. So all of those things are super important to us to work on anyways. So working with NPHS and figuring out ways to do infill development really was important to us because we want to make sure that we are ticking lots of boxes for lots of people. So it is more than just this project for us. Like I said, we work with them in our home repair program, which again, I don't know if there's any cities on there, but if there are any cities on there, they're amazing. They're awesome with that side of the programming as well. And they're really helping us to make these buildings less inefficient. They're helping with our low-income community in more ways than one. So it really is just a successful partnership for us. And that really led to the city wanting to put so much money into this project. This is kind of a tester for us. We've never done this before. And as we stated, as Jesse stated, it's 3 lots that are turning into 6 lots. So we're also working with the lot splits, which is a complicated process, just in case no one's done that before. So we're working through all of the kinks of that right now, but it's something that I think will be really successful. We've, random properties that have sat empty for a long time tend to have random trouble that you didn't see coming, but I'm really thankful that NPHS and the city are able to have such a good connection that we're working through all of our various problems. So it's been great so far. Jesse, is there anything that I'm forgetting?
No, but even if you do, I'll probably mention it because we're running on time, but no,
Okay, no
that was
problem.
wonderful. I just want to also just show not only the or highlight this, the staff has been phenomenal to work with, but also the council. I was very nervous going into a meeting asking for all that we asked, right? And that's I would assume anybody would be, but I was surprised how well received this project was. When we went in, we had residents as well who were like, I don't want a CLT. I want real home ownership. I don't want a manufactured home. I want a real house. And by the time I finished the presentation, they stopped me and said, can I have your card? I'd love to buy one of these homes when they're built, because they again, it's just a misconception and they don't quite understand the all that goes into a CLT, what the affordability really looks like. And then also these homes, they think that they're thinking of a mobile home in their head when this is just like they're built with the same exact materials that we're building our houses with. And it's even better because, again, would you want your car built out on a field or in a factory? I think it's going to be much better in a factory. And it is. We can complete a 1,500 square foot house in 9 days. So you talk about even response to some of what's going on right now with the LA fires. I think manufactured housing is definitely an opportunity because not only can you deliver them in very quickly, but they come already wildfire resilient if you wanted them to. And so that's what we got to be thinking about, is not only retrofitting our communities to ensure that they can withstand these natural disasters, but what we're building new can do the same, right? And so this was an example of our process for the partnership with the city. It kind of goes all over the place, because sometimes you're responding to RFPs, and other times, you kind of find something and then you approach the city with an unsolicited proposal. So this kind of goes in and out, but this is how we've seen it. The regulatory agreements is, I think, the most important aspect, and it's something that a lot of times the city attorneys are not used to, and even the city staff, because they're used to, again, subsidize a certain DDA, right, and PSA maybe, and then you have your affordability restrictions that are placed against the property, and when you go to sell, those go to the homeowner. Well, because NPHS never leaves the transaction, really all of those regulatory requirements are between NPHS and the city, and then we work with the homeowner through the ground lease on ensuring that those covenants are kept, right? And so it's a little bit different process, but what happens is the city essentially gets free staff in NPHS. They get adjunct staff that is monitoring this project throughout the life of it. And what's great is that there's always assurances. So if anything ever happens to NPHS, the city still retains the right back to the land. So that land will revert back to the city, and they can find another entity, or they themselves can manage that. And so for us, housing our workforce, it's about the paycheck. The price of a home is tied to income, so it remains affordable in perpetuity. So the land is a community asset, with the home set aside for the workforce. So I'll tell you a bit about how this all works. So again, the city's going to deed the land to the trust. 99 years, the homeowner is going to go into this ground lease with us. They have exclusive rights to the property. It's just like home ownership. They can paint it, whatever. There's nothing. They can do what they need to do with the property. They can design whatever they want. They're going to get conventional financing, just like any other home. We've got lenders who work with community land trust. And the only thing is that they're committing to selling this property, if they ever decide to sell in the future, to another low-income household. And that is where, again, the restrictions lie. So they're going to have a 30-year mortgage, just like anybody else. So it's just like home ownership. Only difference is the fee simple. It's a leasehold rather than fee simple type transaction. And the amount that they're paying for the land lease, we get this question a lot. It is minimal. Like, we're not charging $1,500. It's usually less than $150 a month, and it's more of like a maintenance type arrangement. So how do we? Again, I discussed it a little bit. How do we keep it affordable in perpetuity? The price of the home is sold based on their affordability. So if somebody is low income, 80% AMI and below, depending on their household size, that could be a different number. We back into what number they can afford. That's the sales price of the home. Even if it costs us $500,000 to build, if somebody only qualifies for 170 or 200 or 250, that's the sale price. Now, the appreciation, again, is tied to the area median income. And I have an example here that I mentioned a little bit earlier. In the last 10 years, you've seen the AMI increase in Riverside County by 32%. So that's 32% at minimum in a decade. They're going to see an appreciation. So they still see that appreciation. Plus, again, any equity that they've built through paying down the mortgage, they get to realize all of that. And here's another example, just so you see it in terms of pricing. If they bought it for $200, they sold it at $264, and they also reap whatever they've paid down on the mortgage. This is why we love community land trust. Here's some slides that were shared by our consultant with Burlington and Associates, and work with, they are a CLT and work in Sonoma County. And so this is a graph showing during the Great Crisis, 2008, foreclosure crisis, you saw community land trusts were not affected. And that's the key, keeping stability within our housing stock and our communities. So an example of this is a one-time community investment serves to keep the home affordable to subsequent buyers, just like the first buyer. So if you bought, so the first buyer, it's just as affordable to them as the 10th buyer, the 5th buyer, or however many transactions it goes to. And again, this is just showing what they've done in terms of completed resales. And so this is data that we use to kind of understand what what's really happening in real life, right? Because you can do all of these things via models, but knowing the actual data. So thankfully we have years and years of data that we've been able to gather. And so on average, most of these homes are sold for at least $50,000 more than they're purchased. Upon selling the homes, the average homeowner walks away with a minimum of $100,000, or an average, I should say, of $100,000 in total equity. And they can use that towards the purchase of a market rate home now, or do whatever they want with it. So why does this matter, right? This subsidy retention. Well, it's eliminating the need for the government private subsidies in future years, as I mentioned. You're tying the subsidy to the unit and not a family. And so you're maintaining the income of the workforce within the housing stock, right? Because you're indexing it to AMI. And then you're creating, community wealth and personal wealth while maintaining the future affordability. So to me, this is the value add to any city and community who's considering CLTs as sort of, this each buyer, or are you looking at the project and for all subsequent buyers or owners of that land? And I see Ariel came off of mute. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of point out, because there's a little bit of conversation happening over in the comments as well. But the city had $10 million that went from general fund to what we're calling our housing set aside dollars. And so that is what we're using in order to pay for this I think we're at 2.7-ish now, $2.7 million going towards this project specifically. And we have used the rest of the funding towards our other affordable developments that have happened. So just like Jesse said, like, we're looking at how we can stretch those dollars in ways that are creative. So for our affordable rental units, we all know how that works, but this is a different idea and a different way to do that, and really assisting with families. And it is really important to our city council specifically to focus on generational wealth and make sure that these things can be passed down. Because even though this isn't a CLT, and either Jesse has said it or will say it, but this can be passed down to families. This can be put in trust. This can stay within a household, for generations. And that's one of those things that, people buy homes for. So we're really happy to be putting in this initial influx of money, and happy to see where it goes, and who it can bring to the valley, to Palm Springs, and how we can expand it from there.
Thank you. And I noticed the time, so I'll just go ahead and wrap up. I mean, I went through sort of how we took the journey into this space in both the manufactured side and the CLT side. And then we dove in, to the project, how, sort of that came about, and the city's needs and wants versus, NPHS's mission, and how those align. And we were able to come together to make this happen. And then how we sort of structured the financing for not just the development of the project, but also how home buyers can see this home ownership benefit them, and how it benefits the overall community. So I'll end there and I'll stop sharing, and we can talk about more questions or answer questions if people have any. I couldn't see the chat, so I'm sorry. And thanks for jumping in there.
Yeah, since we have a few moments, we could lean in a little bit to this space and take another 5 minutes. If you guys want to raise your hand, if you have a question that you think could be answered. Otherwise, we could just follow up with Jesse or Ariel separately. But I wanted to how many units does it include or projected to include? I know that was kind of because of the lot split complexity and stuff. What are the projected?
We're hoping 6 total.
Six
one
total?
of the lots, one of the lots is in question only because there are some interesting rules around the SB9 lot split and subdividing adjacent lots, and there's also some issues with just utilities and easements. So once we sort that out, we'll see if we can get 2 units. We think we still can, but we may have to lose like a garage or 2 and have all, street parking or something else. So we're working through that, but the idea is 6.
Yeah, that's great. I know you guys are feeling the innovation pains for us all. And so we really look forward to following this, because, this is CLT is something that we see in the Midwest done all day, every day, but really in our area, the Inland Empire is a great space to consider community land trusts. And so it's just, we don't have them. So I'm super excited for the collective and for others to kind of follow along and learn with you guys. Because I love how community land trusts, they achieve the ability of preserving a housing typology, right? Like this is set, this is not like this will remain affordable for workforce, right? This isn't going to move out of that space. So the retention for it staying in that space and remaining affordable is exciting. So if anyone wants to come or raise their hand real quick, we could take 1 or 2 questions. If there's anything dire, if not, I could send these just simple chats, or maybe you guys could follow up with the folks separately.
Sure. I see who pays to run the CLT. Nobody pays. It's part of our mission work. We collect a small maintenance fee again on a monthly basis. But there's no necessarily payment for that. Thanks, Tim.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming, Jesse and Ariel, and I see Clemente and I see many other NPHS folks on here too. So thanks for coming and sharing with us. I
Thank
think we're all
you.
excited to track and see how this moves forward. So
We appreciate the opportunity. And if I can just say to Mario from Colton, I did put my contacts. I think somebody else posted it there. But we're working with Akimi right now on your MORE program. So if you have any questions, you can also get contact information from her as well. Look forward to speaking with you.
Awesome. And Ariel, thank you for coming and representing the city. I know that it's definitely a partnership, and getting a city ready to be in that innovation space and being able to work through some of the pains of doing something like this and the creativity process is exciting. So we're thankful for the city of Palm Springs leading that effort and you guys just demonstrating that for us. So, thanks for joining and sharing out too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we're happy to do. And by the time we figure it out and get it together, everybody will be ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So now we're going to open up this time to do some pillar updates. So this last month, we've had all our pillars join, been able to have a meeting. And so I wanted to open this space for any of the chairs, or if there isn't any chairs here, I could step in.